Hello everybody, I'm Claire and welcome to my video blog. Well, this year certainly is getting interesting. I just want to do a quick video blog now about the Austrian election, the announcement that the Austrian election for president is to be rerun. It was about a month before the Brexit vote, and it was extremely narrow, the result. In fact, well, I stayed up to hear the result online, and when all the polling stations had been counted, I believe Hofer, the FPÖ, what's called the right-wing candidate, the nationalist, Freedom Party of Austria, I think he was a few thousand ahead, or it was neck and neck. Anyway, it was extremely close. And I remember seeing a report that the Green candidate would need to get substantially more than the 50-50 that it had broken down as. In other words, he would need to do something to break Hofer's existing lead, because Hofer had a slight lead. And lo and behold, the postal ballots, which were the ones that were mostly in question, turned out a 60-40 vote in favour of the Green, which is extremely unexpected. And anyway, after that, after a little initial bit of consultation, the FPÖ decided to put in a complaint to the Austrian Electoral Court Commission, and here it is. It's just been announced. It was recorded on Twitter, and there's an article on Breitbart, so I'll link to that. This is really quite extraordinary, because I think one of the things that was in the background for the Brexit vote was that a lot of us were very worried that there might be vote rigging, the way we strongly suspected there was in Austria. Now, the court has come out and upheld at least 20 of the complaints against different districts. 20 districts have had complaints upheld against them out of a total, I think it's 120 something districts, or 117 or thereabouts. And over 90 districts had complaints put in about them, and the 20 most serious have been upheld, and there may be more, but obviously once they'd got 20 they thought that was definitely enough to call for a rerun of the election. And it's also of concern that there were an unusually high number of postal votes. I believe it was something in the region of nearly twice as many postal votes as normally in Austrian national presidential elections. And with the actual counted original supposed majority of the Green candidate, with the unfortunate name of von Bellen, only won by some 30,000. So if there were 300 and odd thousand votes which were spirited out of nowhere, and as a high proportion of those more than the normal. I mean, if they were invented, lots of them invented and given over to Van Bellen, then one hopes that the rerun, which will probably be taking place in September, where lots of stuff still going on, one may hope that if the vote is correctly rerun, there will be much better oversight of the voting and the counting. Apparently there were a lot of these boxes of postal votes were left open, unattended overnight. This is obviously very dodgy. I'm not quite sure about the registration. I believe they were saying that some of the registration, some of these towns had more than 100% of the people voting as well. I think that was something. Anyway, there were all serious complaints, and it's going to be rerun probably in the autumn. And, well, we have to think about the implications for the whole of Europe, because here we are in Britain. There's a lot of shenanigans going on. I'll have to get back to that in a separate video. But it seems to me that we're entering a phase now where the Brexit vote will almost certainly have some kind of impact on the Austrian voters. And of course, we mustn't forget that there have been several new plans rolled out by the EU this week. Immediately after the Brexit vote became apparent, there was the plans for further integration of the EU superstate with powers for unifying and overriding all laws on a central basis, tax systems, and of course further dissolution of borders. Then there's the EU army, which has also been announced, which would be used to basically repress what people from the Council on Foreign Relations are already calling insurgents, right? So the native population of Europe are now being seen as insurgents, right? All this sort of stuff. There's so much. I'll have to do a separate video on that. But getting back to Austria, I think they're going to be very, very, very worried about Austria. They don't like Green candidates to be overruled and displaced by far-right candidates. I mean, as far as I understand, Hofer, as far as European right-wing parties go, he's kind of fairly moderate. I believe that he was even in favour of staying in the EU, but just with more control over borders and that kind of stuff. EU light with a slight nationalist touch, which shouldn't really have been too frightening for the EU people, but they're so determined, they're so intent, and they seem to have some kind of deadline for themselves. Obviously, if this year, the way this year is, there's so much stuff coming out this year, there's so much going on politically that I guess I can understand their anxieties, but people like Juncker and Merkel saying horrible things about Britain in the last week haven't exactly helped the whole European integration project, and we're hearing about all these different exit, particularly from the Netherlands and France, but Austria is in there. And I think the fact that electoral fraud has been pretty much demonstrated, then I think this must have some kind of effect on the people in Austria. Obviously, there are probably going to be 300,000 less votes for Bellin anyway. And what must the people of Austria think about the fact that they have nearly had a fraudulent vote foisted on them? Now, I wouldn't suggest that the Green candidate himself was complicit in this, because the people who like to set these things up always like to have plausible deniability. So I quite imagine that it might have been some kind of black arm's length agency of, who knows, probably in some way associated with the EU, but again, in plausible deniability and arm's length. And these people don't like it going against them. It's gone against them in the British referendum, and they must be realising now that you can have surges which overwhelm the little tweaks that they could normally manage to contrive to make sure that a few constituencies here and there just make the difference in marginal areas. I think we're seeing a complete resurgence of European identity, and this is completely unstoppable. It's happening now, and well, I don't want to get too optimistic, but I think that it's highly likely that Hoover will win this. If Hoover wins this, I think we can see the EU getting into a really, really extreme panic. Perhaps it's too early to be predicting a kind of, the end of the EU in the same way that the Iron Curtain came down in the end of '89. Probably be more like the kind of the 2.5 year, kind of 2 year or so, was it? Yeah, 2 year or so process that it took to get from the fall of the Berlin Wall to the end of the Soviet Union. So obviously it's a huge thing, but it's just daily, the impetus of this thing is happening. It's a great shockwave through the psyche of the European peoples and the whole world. And I think I might go and put a few bob on Norbert Hofer to be elected, because if I get in now, it'll probably be quite good odds. And I should have put more on leave, but Mr. William Hill was very generous with the tenner, with the return on the tenner that I did put in. But no, seriously. The people in EU Central in Brussels must be really crapping themselves, really wetting their pants and doing all sorts of stuff that's panicking, basically. They'll be going, oh, the EU's coming to an end. Yes, it is, folks. And just day by day, more of this stuff is coming along. I'm sure Hoover will win, or there will probably be riots. I don't know. But that's my bet anyway, and I think that whoever was behind the voting fraud in Austria won't get away with it a second time. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on Austria, more of the beginning of the end of the EU, the rise of nationalist identity, and we're all reclaiming our countries, folks. Okay, thanks for watching. Cheerio, bye. Slight lead, and lo and behold, the postal ballots, which were the ones that were mostly in question, turned out a 60-40 vote in favour of the Green, which is extremely unexpected. And anyway, after that, after a little initial bit of consultation, the FPÖ, I think he was a few thousand ahead, or it was neck and neck. Anyway, it was extremely close. And I remember seeing a report that the Green candidate would need to get substantially more than the 50-50 that it had broken down as. In other words, he would need to do something to break Hofer's existing lead, because Hofer had a... And it was extremely narrow, the result. In fact, well, I stayed up to hear the result online, and when all the polling stations had been counted, I believe Hofer, the FPÖ, what's called the right-wing candidate, the nationalist Freedom Party of Austria. Hello everybody, I'm Claire, and welcome to my video blog. Well, this year certainly is getting interesting. I just want to do a quick video blog now about the Austrian election, the announcement that the Austrian election for president is to be rerun. It was about a month before the Brexit vote. Decided to put in a complaint to the Austrian Electoral Court Commission, and here it is. It's just been announced. It was recorded on Twitter, and there's an article on Breitbart, so I'll link to that. This is really quite extraordinary, because I think one of the things that was in the background for the Brexit vote